Alright, so today we're going to be talking about input from the keyboard. So as we've seen, the Java language provides us with a way to both input to the program from the keyboard and output from our program to the screen. Unfortunately, the methods that Java gives us to do this are very primitive and inefficient and are very difficult to work with. So what we have done in this course is decide to start using methods from the console class found in the Holt Software HSA package that they developed. So we'll start by taking a look at numerical data and inputting numerical data. Here's a line of code that does just that. This line of code is going to read an integer value from the keyboard and store it in a variable called age that we've declared somewhere earlier in our program. And what you'll see when you look at this line of code is immediately it's very different from the print and println methods we were working with earlier. In the print and println methods, first of all, we didn't need to store any data in a variable, we just printed something to the screen. And secondly, the print and println methods required arguments to be provided so we knew what to print to the screen. In this case, we're going to return the value to a variable, so we have to have something here to store it in. And secondly, we don't have to put anything in the brackets here. We don't have to provide any arguments. However, we do still have to have the smooth brackets, as it's these brackets that tell Java that this is a method that is going to be used for the console that we've created. Now, whenever we're going to try and do any kind of input from the user, we have to tell the user that we're looking for input, and more specifically, we have to tell them what we are asking them to input. This is called using a prompt. So here you can see a prompt that's been provided to the user to tell them to please enter their age. Now the user knows that they have to provide some sort of number and hit enter in order to make the computer continue. Otherwise, the program will just sit there with a blinking cursor in the top corner, and the person will be ending up looking at it saying, what am I supposed to do now? Obviously not ideal. Here's an example of a program that does just that. In this case, we've got the first two lines of code here. These two lines of code are actually what we call comments. The forward slashes here represent a line that means it's not actually going to do anything in the program itself. Instead, this is here to explain to the programmer what this particular piece of code is supposed to do. In this case, the code is going to declare a variable called integer, or a variable of an integer called age. We're then going to provide our prompt to the user to tell them to please enter their age, and then we're going to input the age. We're going to input the age, which is an integer variable, and store it in that variable we declared before. We're then going to print to the user what their age will be next year by adding 1 to that variable that we just finished inputting from before. We can also input real numbers or decimal numbers in the same way that we do it with integers. The only difference is that these variables may contain a decimal point. This means that the type of variable we have to use will be different. So in this case, I'm going to create a double, which allows me to use decimal numbers that I've called weight. Again, I provide my prompt, and then input the information from the keyboard using the double instead of the int. I can also use these methods to input text data from the keyboard. This is done using a method called readLine, and it works exactly the same way as readDouble and readInt. The only difference is that the data in this case must be stored in a variable of type string. A string variable is the type of variable we use to store text data, or multiple characters. And it looks something like this. Okay? So again, I'm going to have my variable declared. I'm going to provide a prompt. I'm going to input using readLine, meaning I'm going to get characters that are not numbers, store them in my variable called name, and then I'm just going to print out what your name was. Just a side note on strings. You need to remember that a string is not a primitive data type in Java, so it wasn't included in the list of variable types that we talked about the day before. It is in fact an object. What this means is that strings are going to have methods that can be performed on them. Don't worry about it for now. All for now you need to know is that a string is the variable type that we're going to be used to store multiple characters. And if you want to declare a variable of type string, it's done the same way as we did the other ways. You just give it the type and a valid name. That's it, and we'll practice working with this tomorrow. See you then.